associations, the Ohio State Medical Association and the Ohio Osteopathic Association. So they'll certify coursework. Physicians biennial are required to complete at least 100 hours of type 1 and type 2 CME. Type 1 is something that's documented. So if you were to take an online course, you would sign up for it, you would have some kind of evidence that you attended it and that you participated. Type 2 would be scholarly, reading scholarly journals, and those are reported back to the board, but they don't have the evidence of proof associated with them. But as far as specific CME, tailored CME, I think it's fairly limited that we have any specifics, but if at all.
We don't have, we have a requirement for individuals that are, have a pain clinic license. They have to have some specialized CME around the prescribing of opioids, but in general, the board wants physicians to be able to take CME in the areas that match up with their practice. So we don't have a lot of specialized, but there's specialized courses available, through the OSMA, the OOA, and certainly national groups, and the certifying boards, and so there's a lot of content as far as content specifically related to medical marijuana. So I think the content related to diagnosing qualifying conditions, there's probably lots of information about that. Qualifying condition, treating qualifying conditions with medical marijuana, I think that's where there's probably less information. We know about the New York course, we know about a Florida course. I would expect that, CME providers start doing more of that as more states are having the programs and the requirements.
And I would piggyback on that and say that I don't think that the requirement of 2 hours prior to the certificate being issued is really going to be the limiting factor. I think our discussion with both patients and their interactions with their physicians is that physicians want this information. So as this CME becomes available, I don't think it's going to be an issue of forcing anyone to meet that requirement, that threshold. I think it's going to be they're going to go out and seek it out.
Do you have an idea of what the fees for the CME are?
I think the Florida course was maybe $250. I'm sorry, I think it was, I seem to remember $250 for one of the courses. That might have been the New York course.
So I mean, it's not so much the time as it is the physicians are going to have to write a check for $250 to $500 just to get the certificate.
And to be mindful of that, I mean, again, no fees from the medical board associated with that to try to defray those issues.
Or it could provide an opportunity for a business case to be made to someone develop this work inside the state of Ohio, if there are folks so inclined to do so. I think there are entities that like to build that education material up. Other questions or comments? Yes?
I think really the conversation that's being had is about the reality that physicians are indeed the gatekeepers to this program, as they should. The concern is, on the physician's time, would really point to looking at a broad range of regulatory solutions in this space. The ones that you've mentioned have tended to be the most restrictive, that have led to failures in certain programs, like we've seen in Illinois when we changed the rules because of this very issue, because they weren't seeing the type of physician participation. So if you're looking at the initial certification process for physicians being less a registration and more of an application, that immediately is tended to depress physician participation at the outset. So language you see in B2 here, B2A, that says that the materials will be thoroughly investigated, right? So when you look at the materials that are being submitted, the question is what type of thorough investigation would be necessary based on having met this criteria, provided those information. I mean, I don't see that there's some sort of background check, as you've indicated, or that there's some sort of request for letters of recommendation from other physicians or the like. So what kind of thorough investigation is expected, and did you see that scaring off physicians, or what kind of time frame did that take?
This is based on our existing licensure rule. So, it's really the same language that we have. There's a lot less to investigate in this. There's no background check. We're not going to be asking for recommendations, or, we don't have, like the full credentials review like we have with an application that does add a lot of time and expense to the application process. So we're not going to have any of those things. I think we will want to, review the materials and research if we needed, if there are prior actions of that individual, if they aren't signed up in ORs, that's something that we've been talking with the Board of Pharmacy about, getting some of that information. If they don't have a DEA, as far as the financial interest, that's probably an attestation. I don't see us doing, individual, investigation into that unless we had information, that was an issue. So I think we certainly want to try to investigate those items, but I would anticipate it being a lot lighter than the things that we currently do, because we'll have less information.
And we're also envisioning this to be fully integrated with our new licensing system too. So the physician's going to have effectively a one-stop process. For the initial certification, it might be outside of the original list, as Kim said. But really, once you're in there, we see this as, again, part of that continuum that the physician is already going through. To your point about the interaction with registering the patient in the first place, we've worked with the pharmacy board and kind of outlined how we expect that interaction to go. Non-critical components that are not statutorily required by the physician, we're looking to a delegate to have the opportunity to do, so that the physician's time is preserved for just that patient interaction. And then we see that as more of a consultation, walking through the patient registry with the patient, having that conversation, and kind of working through those requirements so that it's that continuum of the patient visit without taking up more time than is needed.
And so do you have an expectation of how long you think this certification process should take?
I would say we'd be more comfortable getting back to you if we could do some, we'll sit down and do some time and not a clean application. So if they meet all the requirements, how long does that take? I don't think we've estimated very long, but we can get back to the committee with some time estimates on that.
Yes.
I just had a question about, once a physician receives a certificate to recommend, where will that data then live? And I guess primarily coming from two different perspectives. So the first being from a patient perspective. So for example, if their institution of the physician that they're seeing doesn't allow them to recommend, but they feel like it's of benefit to the patient, how can they publicly look up that information? Would it be in combination with the medical board licensee lookup? And then secondarily, from a dispensary perspective, how can we ensure that those folks have access to that information as well? Will it be within the registry, or will they have to go to a separate within the medical licensure lookup as well?
We're still working out those details, and that's the issue about whether the fact that a physician has a certificate to recommend, whether that's public or not. In our state, it is public. So, and we envision that there will be a suffix on the end of the physician's license, so that it would be identifiable. As to whether we would publish lists or have a lookup, I don't think we are to that point yet. And we do. I think that's an area where we recognize, there are access issues there too. So if a physician knows that that information is going to be public, are they going to be less likely to want to get that certificate to recommend? And then also, if they want to, provide information to their patients, how could there be a lookup list? And I think those are some issues that other states have struggled with. I think under our public records law, I don't think there's a way not to make it public. So I think that information would be, but we are also mindful that it could have a chilling effect for the physicians. So that's something that we're really trying to be very, very cautious.
To your point at the dispensary level, we're expecting a system integration between our licensing system and the dispensing system to certify that the certificates have.
Yes.
First, I also want to commend you on a thorough job on this. I think this is one of the most critical pieces of the legislation, and that is to make sure that we have, as they say, a bona fide relationship, doctor and patient relationship. And so I appreciate your work on it. I understand that the need to make sure, I certainly understand the need to make sure that that a good doctor-patient relationship that's healthy and strong and works toward the goal of good patient takes place. On the other hand, I'm also concerned that I don't see a lot of doctors yet saying, yeah, I'm there. So to balance that, what will happen to maybe to the rural areas or areas where there are fewer doctors and maybe fewer doctors that are willing to prescribe this sort of thing? What's the thought about balancing that out when we are requiring it face-to-face, and there may not be doctors in that area that are willing to do this? So I want the balance. I don't want the pill mill doctors. I don't want the sham that's going on in California with it. But yet, if we're going to do this, let's balance this out so that the people that believe they need it can have access to it.
I think you've really articulated the concerns that we've had, and our board certainly has had experience over the last 5 or 10 years on the opioid crisis, and we're trying to bring the lessons learned to this process. I think the statute requires an in-person visit, so we are limited there. But other states also require an in-person visit, and I think that we certainly understand that telemedicine has a good role, and we're currently finalizing a rule that actually allows for a bit of an expansion of that. But we just are really concerned in making sure that there is that bona fide patient relationship, and a face-to-face visit is the best way for us to deal with it. I do think, though, we want to make sure that we're getting good data out of this program, so that if there are adjustments that we need to make to deal with access issues, that we have that information and we're able to do it. And I think that is a really important piece.
And some of the travels that we had as part of learning about this program, we had the opportunity to meet with some patients. And we found similar situations there where maybe a primary care physician didn't feel comfortable recommending medical marijuana, but the patient would then find a doctor who would, and the patient kind of becomes the go-between. They become very actively involved, and the patients we spoke to had a very healthy relationship with their primary care physician, letting them know that they were using medical marijuana. And I think that, to a certain extent, helped to bridge the gap, that access issue that you talked about. So that was very encouraging to me that people would find a way to make this work within their kind of conventional healthcare structure.
It'll be an interesting thing to watch, because my perception at this point is that it will be the patient who is reaching out for the marijuana, and not necessarily the doctor saying you've got to have this at this point. So the thing that I think, it's just a concern, and I'm not sure how we do it, is that doctors who are willing to do it don't say me, and end up figuring out that's their, again, go back to the pill mill. That's my biggest concern about this whole thing, so we don't get into that sort of situation.
We agree 100%.
We'll take one more comment here, and then we'll move on.
And looking at the states, other states have approved this over the past few years, what's been their experience in terms of getting doctors on board? I think this is the question she's raising. Are we seeing an evolution in other states where doctors realize, hey, those patients are benefiting, I want to help my patients, so they sign up? Have you seen that kind of sort of swelling interest in other states?
I think it kind of depends on the state's requirements. I know James mentioned Illinois is one state where there haven't been a lot of adopters, and some of the other states have a lot of adopters. And my personal opinion, not representing the medical board here, is that the states that have a lot of physicians adopted it tended to have less requirement or onerous steps for the physician to obtain the ability to prescribe or recommend, or whatever term you want to use. And the more restrictive a state is in that first initial step, the less physicians are going to do that.
And where are our requirements on the continuum of restrictiveness relative to other
Under
states?
the statute, we are restricted. We do require the physician to obtain a certificate, to recommend, and that they have to obtain that through the medical board. So that is more restrictive than some other states.
And again, I think on the continuum, it is, and certainly I recognize that the letter of the statute drove a lot of what we see here in the rules. That being said, and I think probably physicians here can attest to this more than any of us, that it really can come down to how many clicks we're talking about. I mean, how much, and there's a way to create in the rule the ability to streamline that process. So it is a certificate, but that certificate could take the form of a more registration type process than it would be a more application type process. And what we've seen in other states is those that are essentially encouraging the physicians to participate by way of acknowledging that they are intending to have these type of discussions with their patients